Rotus, take it away, my brother.
Hey, Rufai, good morning to you. Good morning, Vimbai. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning to all our viewers out there. Of course, beginning in Asia, mixed bag as far as the stocks are concerned. Your Shanghai Composite Index in mainland China, that's down. The Nikkei 225 in Japan up by 54 basis points. In fact, the topics and the Nikkei, despite Prime Minister Kishida announcing stepping in. It looks like the markets liked it. Kospi up, Hang Seng down, that's in Hong Kong. The ASX S&P 200 in Australia down. So you've already touched on this, on the Prime Minister stepping down. Markets reacting positively. You mentioned, Ayo was talking about leadership and the corruption scandals going on there. There's a poll, and I think we should adopt this here in Nigeria, because if you poll Americans and ask them what they think about Congress, they have the lowest approval ratings of any branch of government. Same with Japan. If you look at the a poll, a cabinet support, only 20% support there, but about over 50% are against the activities of the cabinet there. So we're going to be getting a new prime minister, I guess, after his 3-year tenure. But then, as I said, the markets seemed to like that. Still in Asia, we go to New Zealand. The Reserve Bank of New Zealand surprising markets by actually cutting interest rates. It's a benchmark rate. So 25 basis points down to 5.25%. The markets, our economists that were surveyed, were expecting them to keep that at 5.5. They pointed to the fact that inflation in New Zealand has been decelerating. It was 4% in March, that's year on year, fell to 3.3% in June. And so with the trajectory of where things are going, the Reserve Bank's inflation target is between 1 to 3%. So they felt confident enough that they can cut rates over in New Zealand. And they forecast that inflation should remain just within that target for the rest of this year. Over to the UK, we got inflation figures coming in hot this morning. For year-on-year, just looking at the year-on-year figures, they came in under estimates, although they did rise past the Bank of England's, the BOE's target. So for July, year-on-year inflation in the UK, 2.2%. The estimates were for 2.3%. The target, of course, was where it was in June at 2%. That's the Bank of England target. Core inflation, when you strip out energy, volatile food and so on and so forth, that was at 3.3%, but under estimates of 3.4%. But the key one is services inflation is what Andrew Bailey and others keep looking at, and that's 5.2%, but that also came in under estimates of 5.5%. So will we see another rate cut from the Bank of England? We'll see what happens at their next meeting. AstraZeneca, we talked about them when we were looking at the average salaries of FTSE 100 CEOs. Remember, Mr. Pascal is the highest paid CEO in the FTSE 100, 16.9 million. The company yesterday became the most valuable company on the FTSE 100 in Britain. Britain's most valuable company, overtaking Shell in April. So basically, the stock price has rallied over in the UK, I think about 20% so far this year. It was up about 1.2, 1.5% yesterday on the FTSE 100. So now 200 billion pounds. And you got to ask yourself, when you think about where tech companies are in the US, the Nvidias, the Microsofts, the Apples of this world, for the UK to have a company, I mean, if you convert that to dollars, it's what, 350 billion in dollars. So the UK has been lagging behind in terms of, I mean, compared to where you see things in Asia and in America, but it's still something to celebrate. We can't forget AstraZeneca was making headlines. Arise News continually covering the COVID pandemic, the new medicines that were coming out, and that is what has fueled the company's profits so far this year. Cancer research, cancer medicines, and also rare disease medicine. So AstraZeneca doing quite well. And so for anyone wondering why their CEO is getting 16.9 million pounds before taxes, there you go. The company is doing pretty well. You touched on this already. Starbucks. This, in fact, if Mr. Kishida in Japan is leadership change number 1, Starbucks is probably leadership change number 2, as I was talking about. So Laxman Narasimhan only came in just under 2 years. He was fired for underperformance. Starbucks sales have been falling in the US, falling in China. There was also some backlash over Israel about some reported comments that the company was supporting the Israeli government, and so there was some backlash there. So there's been a whole lot of issues. And Starbucks coffee, if you ever had it, it's quite expensive. So So the gentleman that's been running things at Chipotle, he's coming. If you look at your, you should have a little pictures in front of you. So Nasharima is out. The CFO, Rachel Ruggeri, which, by the way, they've had 3 CFOs in the last 2 years. So there's been a lot of leadership musical chairs over at Starbucks. She's going to hold the fort until September the 9th. And then Brian Nicole comes in. Starbucks stock rose by over 20%. It was the biggest rally in the stock's history, showing you that investors really wanted a change in leadership. I think Vimbai mentioned that activist investors that wanted a change. If you're not performing, you go. But by the way, Chipotle stock fell because Mr. Fix-It, as they're calling him, Nicole, since he's moving from one company to the next. So you saw the divergence there in the stock prices. All right, to Nigeria now, just to round off. I figured we would just compile all the oil and gas headlines that we've seen in just the last, 72 hours? So I think after our conversation that we had yesterday, the Dangote group came out to refute that punch story that they're going to be selling fuel at 600 naira per litre. What else has been going on? They also said they're still on target to sell PMS in August. That is still something that they said they'd sell in June. Then I think the fire thing pushed it back. Then there was July that pushed back. So they're still saying that they could sell PMS in August. Then you already mentioned this very interesting NNPC saying that the reason why they reduced their equity stake in the refinery was because they wanted to invest in CNG. And it's interesting how that is coming out now, because when the statement was put out initially, all they said was that we are reevaluating our portfolio allocations, and that's why we reduced it. But again, there was a big song and dance made about this 20% allocation, and so that has an impact. So, the CNG thing, again, when you think about gas in Nigeria, our gas, what we get from gas is a byproduct of what we pull from the ground from oil. It's still very capital intensive. You still have competition for gas in terms of cooking gas and other things like that. So we'll see how the CNG thing works out. And then I think you already touched on this. I heard Rufai laughing when this was read, that the Port Harcourt refinery postponed for a 6th time. And look, you had a fantastic guest yesterday, Dumebi Kachuku, the former ADC presidential candidate, who was saying that, look, it's imperative for the Dangote refinery to have already secured feedstock from other sources outside of this country, because when you see postponements like this, if you were planning on investing around your own government refineries, you will be stuck in the mud because it's just one delay after another, and you just lose confidence at some point. Remember, Atiku said he would sell them. But there's something I keep saying is, who will buy those refineries? And then there's the issue going back to this 600 naira price thing. Considering the price mechanisms for PMS, which are not the same as diesel. Dangote refinery has already started pushing out diesel. Diesel is deregulated. Keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. PMS is not. So how that impacts their profit margins, we'll have to see how that works out. And then finally, if you look at the top of the masthead for today's This Day newspaper, but we put it at the bottom there. They say Kyari is ramping up the war against oil theft. So it's just one oil and gas headline after another.
They've been ramping up the war against oil theft. They've been ramping up this war against upset since God knows when. Tantita will come and ramp up the war. Everybody will ramp up the war, but we are not ramping up on OPEC quotas. We've not ramped up on 2 million barrels per day. They are always ramping, pumping. We're a joke in this country. I mean, we're child's play. We're like Chucky. And it's so sad. And the NNPC, like I said before, coming out to say because of CNG, I mean, spare me, cry me a river. Really? You are saying because of CNG, you're still investing in your own refinery, and you're still saying, oh, you want a Port Harcourt refinery will soon come on stream, we're sorry about it, blah, blah, blah. And you're saying because of CNG. So if Dangote did not come out, Rotus, to say that they didn't pay up their paid-up capital, are they going to say it's about CNG in the first place? You see, that's why sometimes this fight really revealed a lot. And you were talking about Dumebi. See, Rotus, please, fact-check me. I want you to fact-check me, my brother. When NNPC said they were putting a 20% stake in Dangote refinery, fact-check me if they never assured oil, too, in that deal to supply crude to that refinery. Because when everybody was saying, when Dumebi was there, I was just laughing. You think Dangote will set up a 20 billion refinery without thinking of a feedstock No, now. It's been importing from places like Libya and Brazil. Didn't Dangote announce that? So please, let's stop putting that narrative forward that Dangote did, and America. Let's stop putting that narrative forward that I didn't think of a feedstock. But Rotus, like I said, fact check me. If part of the investment deal by NNPC was not also about making crude available as part of the investment deal, fact check me and give me feedback. If I'm wrong, I'll gladly admit I'm wrong. I don't have a monopoly of knowledge anyway.
All right.
I'm correct. So you fact check me.
Well, first, let me say that with regards to AstraZeneca, it actually said that it was the projected, in terms of their revenue for this year, the projected sum was that it was going to surpass previous. So we should see even a higher income for the CEO. So that what we're celebrating, 16.9 billion, is nothing compared to what might come following this windfall, as I would like to put it. But beyond that, Rotus, there's a conversation I'd like to ask you about, which you didn't touch on today, which is the laying off of staff members of I wouldn't say laying off, but put on, leave without pay, immediate effect from Azman Air, and they said that they are suspending their flights currently as a result of some of their flights or the carriers having to go through the C checks and also the high cost of operations. Of course, there have been concerns around that, especially the impact on hundreds of staff members, workers there, and also this talk around business environment, enabling business environment for businesses in Nigeria. It's a big concern. I believe it was a few days ago we were talking about the aviation sector and how that, we're looking at high costs of flying, and this has also, of course, meant that less people are traveling because they just can't afford to pay about 500,000 naira for a return flight, to Abuja, for instance. But the airline operators are saying the cost of running is too much that we cannot, but put this amount of money. What is the prospect for the aviation sector? Because we need to look at this. Will other airlines go the way of Azman Air?
Yeah, look, some funny person said they had closed down and said also Dana Air had closed down. So that's not true. I just to test it out, I went and booked a ticket on Azman and Dana. So they're all operating. But just like you mentioned with the telco discussion, the cost of doing business, IO, is going up. You look at how much it costs for diesel, you look at the exchange rate, it is impacting businesses across the board, from consumer goods to aviation to telcos.
All right. Very quickly, as we round up, I want to go back to Japan because something stuck out to me, which is that there's been one party in power since 1955. Now, some people are saying that as the prime minister is stepping down, it's because they're looking for a way to sort of reinvent the Liberal Democratic Party. Now, of course, we know that Japan has one of the most stable economies on earth. So I think there's a conversation to be had there that we often have here. I know former President Olusegun Obasanjo often puts this forward and says, is it healthy for, young democracies to continue to change party after party? Now, I'm not pushing the narrative of a one-party state. Of course, that's unhealthy. However, Japan called theirs a dominant party state. Of course, because it's a one major party that continues to win. There are opposition parties. But it's interesting to see that even after having such a run from 1955, they're now coming to that juncture where they're also facing corruption, inflation, all of those challenges. So I think it's an interesting comparison to have and see, whether the economies that perform better are those that have consistently changing political parties, or whether, just some stability and sort of giving like a Rwanda, for example, it has a better impact on the economy, just putting it out there. Rufai is laughing.
Beat me to it. I was going to mention Rwanda.
All right.